Hey there guys, Elita Legionarii here, and today I am bringing you a Motte and Bailey Level siege on the Sahara Sands map for Medieval 2 Total War. This is a 2 versus 3 siege. I believe the funds were... what were the funds again? I think it was like 22... I think it was 22k for the 2 defenders. Like 44k, I think 22k each, and 15 for the 3 attackers, or something like that. I think I was the host, but I can't remember the specifics. I'm playing as Scotland, and my ally is Trenktas-Venice. Although it says Lavernicus, he's actually using Lavernicus' account. Trenktas-Venice is Lavernicus' son, and he's playing as Spain, so my father like son. Both are excellent players. And I like Trenktas' style. He's pretty aggressive if the battle's what I've seen, which is, you know, right up my style, because I play aggressively too, so it's definitely my style and it's his style as well, I think, from what I've seen, which is excellent, because it means we can work together quite well. But in this case we won't be overly aggressive because we are defending, and there's not really any cavalry options except for his general in our armies, so there's not much point in doing too much attack. Anyway, I'll unpause it and begin. Our opponents are Knightly Games, who I think was in the last video I uploaded. He's playing as France, and then we have Russian King, he's playing as the Russians obviously, and then we have Venice under the command of Trenktas. I think he was also in one of my last other videos. So we have some powerful factions, we have some lesser well known factions for sieging, like Russia's not a great siege faction, France is always a good siege faction, Venice and Spain don't need to be told, they're excellent factions for just about everything. Scotland's pretty good for sieging in all honesty, especially as the defender, because you can bring pikes and choke points, and you can bring heavy infantry like the noble knight or noble swordsman, the dismounted feudal knights. They're a good siege faction all round, which is why I went for them. I haven't played as Scotland for ages actually, so you know, I thought it'd be fun. And of course Spain, well, Spain is always just great all round. Russia is a difficult faction to use in sieges, and this army this guy brings is not a good one. British axemen are not good in sieges. They're a two-hander unit, they're the two-hander glitch problem, and they are a shock unit, not good for this kind of battle. Much better on a field battle. The rules stated for artillery that because it's a Motte and Bailey and it's got tiny walls and very minimal defences, the only type of artillery we would allow them to use were ballistas. So that's what they're using. Anyway, my army had 4 units of noble pikemen. I think it was 5 units of 4 or 5, I think it was 4 and 4 of the noble knights and feudal knights. It might have been 5 with one of them, I can't recall. And then I had 4 of the noble Highland archers. And I'm not particularly bothered about them getting a lot of kills on enemies. I'm more interested in them using their morale with fire arrows to drop low enemy morale, particularly the Russian player, because I know that Russian infantry has not got the greatest morale, and therefore it routs pretty quickly, especially if it's confronted with pikes and infantry in prepared lines, and then in conjunction with a whole lot of fire arrows, it should cause them to be pretty ineffective. Anyway, they're beginning to make their attack pretty quickly in the setting. So the siege shouldn't be too long. It's why, I prefer these smaller scale sieges, because otherwise you're stuck in them forever. I mean, I enjoy fortresses and citadel level sieges, but it takes absolutely ages. Like for instance, a citadel for instance takes like 3 hours to actually win, you know, depending on how big it is. So it's a very long siege, and means it's a very long video which requires a lot of editing. But something like this gives you plenty of action, some good scenery, good tactics, and it's not drastically long. I mean, already it's like a third of the way through, so that's good. Anyway, I think they made a critical error in this battle, which I'll get into in a moment. Now here you can see me moving to open the gaps up. This is because I don't want my guys getting shot by the missile units. So that's why I push my guys over to the sides of the walls. So like when they charge in, I'll automatically just stream in on their flanks. It's a pretty standard tactic used in these kind of games. So as he pours in, as you can see, it's like these two feudal knights will just go bang into their flanks, which is exactly what I want to do. So we have some of these guys, and you have to remember, and this is where I think they made a critical mistake, and this is not the first time we've seen players make this mistake in Sieges in Medieval 2, is the attackers don't coordinate their attacks simultaneously. And what happens is they go in against players... Ooh, what's it doing spinning for? Sorry about that. They go in against defenders who have got more upgrades. So, so take for instance, right now the French player's going in, but the Venetian player... Well, he's going in too, but he's not ready to go all the way in, and the Russian player is nowhere near ready to go all the way in. But the French player is going to pour in right away. Now, if I'd been the French player, I would have started pumping any units that, you know, like for instance, what they could have done here is the Russian player could have pushed forward to engage here, and the French player could have moved his missile units, and he could have started shooting my back. And that would have been impossible for me to stop, because I'd have to stop the Russian troops getting inside. That, or I'd have to fall back and then let the Russians inside and destroy them piecemeal, but I'd still be in danger of their Scots Guard. So I'd either have to sit there and take the missiles, retreat and let the Russians in. They're the only options I had if they did that, but they didn't do that. And the French player goes in by himself, and they have to remember, as I said, me and Granticus have 22k each. These guys have 15k each. So to maximise their strength, they have to put their numbers down and distract as many units as possible, so that they're fighting with like 2 or 3 units versus 1 unit in different areas. So that's the way you do it as an attacker, because if you go in against your own against defenders who have got more upgrades than you and they have equal numbers to you in the vicinity, you're going to lose. So anyway, they come in here and we start doing battle. I'm going to pull back, so I'm stopping coming this way, but he's just going to try and pour in on this direction. Now what this does is I'm going to relocate my archers, and I'm going to start putting fire arrows into the flank here, lowering their morale, because pound for pound I've got more upgrades than their guys, and I've got a prepared defensive position, so that gives me the advantage. And that's why you never, as the attacker, I can't stress this point enough to anyone who does a siege. It doesn't matter what game it is. If you're fighting uneven, like an uneven numbered siege, you've got 3 attackers versus 2 defenders, then individually the defenders have more upgrades and stronger men than you, but you have more men. So what you do to even it out is to try and take advantage of your numerical advantage, because if you don't, pound for pound, you will lose the fight because you don't have the same kind of upgrades. And that's the problem the French player is making here. He's fighting me and Granticus on his own, and both of us have more upgrades, and we've already got a prepared defensive position. To counter that, they need to put numbers and pressures down on all areas simultaneously, so that we've got less men defending certain areas. But their attacks are not simultaneous enough. Like the Venetian player was going in too, but he has gone in a little bit later than the French player, and the Russian player is still moving into position. By this point, a good number of the French men have been damaged. Sorry if I'm coughing, it's just because I've been commentating a whole lot today, and it makes me lose my voice. But as you can see, he gets off to a reasonable start because he gets quite a lot of men down. And I mean, this is a good move here. See this? The Russian player's got my flank, which is good. That's what they should do. They should time their attacks simultaneously. What the French player should do is move his archers over here and start shooting my flanks. That'll compensate for the superiority of my upgrades versus their numbers. Because pound for pound, my upgrades will win. And same with Granticus. But what they need to do is they need to try and mass their numbers and get that advantage, because everywhere they're fighting kind of individual piecemeal fights, they're not even numbers, they're losing because they just can't compete with our much higher upgraded men. So I've got some pike action here. Well, the pikes are always messy. The pikes are just there to hold and tire their men out while the swordsmen kill them. That's generally how that works. But this isn't working too well. I'm not sure why he brought armoured sergeants. Maybe he was thinking we were going to make cav strikes. That's the only thing I can think of. So here you can see the Russian infantry trying to push through. Problem is British axemen are not good for this, not at all, not in the slightest. They very quickly getting destroyed. What's actually harming me most are the missile units. Harming my Scottish troops most are the missile units, because British axemen are just not very good against pikes or any sort of prepared sword and shield infantry. They need to get a good shock charge, and if they don't get that, they'll get beaten up pretty quickly. Over here, I think, yeah, Grantic has made some actions with his cavalry to come out. Now over here, as you can see, we're actually surrounding these guys' Venetian troops on my swordsmen, and then these Scottish troops as well, in addition to them receiving missile fire. So they're not combining they didn't combine their attack very well when they started, and they're not using their missile units properly, in my opinion. The Russian player is doing a good job because he's aiming at these flanks, although it's hard for him to hit there, so I think what he would be better to do would be to kind of move up along here so that he wouldn't have to fire directly up. He'd have a more sort of flat trajectory. But I think the French player is making a mistake because he's targeting units that are in sort of defensive positions like this, and so buildings get in the way and that sort of thing. Instead, if he just targeted the back of these guys over here, he'd probably kill them, because the Russian troops will lose this fight easily, so he needs to help his ally there. But as you can see, his infantry is just losing all around the place, and it's not so good. Like, there's some of these units where he's got numbers down is working alright, but we've still got more tactical reserves, and he does not have any tactical reserves. As you can see, Granticus has got several units fighting. Now what we were doing in this fight is we were using my Scottish soldiers to take the brunt at the start. Why? Simply because Scotland's troops, while good, I can compete with them. The Spanish infantry is even stronger. Spanish infantry is much stronger, so if we reserve the strongest for last, they'll get tired infantry fighting against strong Spanish infantry, and they won't be able to break them. That's the idea there too. So the idea is to allow my Scottish to take the brunt of the frontal attack, which is why I'm getting more beaten up in this fight, or my infantry's getting more beaten up. But the Spanish are just supporting me enough in locations, but we're trying to conserve the Spanish infantry a little bit longer, so that at the later stage of the fight they have to bring in their tired units against the stronger Spanish troops. So over here he comes in with his British axemen. I intercept this with my noble swordsman, and I got some pike units here as well. But as you can see, like, he's poured in all these units here. I've only had about 4 men holding about 12 British axemen here, and I've managed to win pretty much all his fights so far. That goes to show you that British axemen, they're not a good siege unit, because two-handers are only good on their charge. And look now, like, seriously, they're getting beaten up. Like, I think it's that 3 units getting beaten up by some heavily depleted noble swordsmen and a pike unit, and his guys are fresh. Over here where he's charged his cavalry, I'm having a little bit more difficulty because there's cavalry, a good cav unit. Same thing over here. I said to Granticus, I said, you know, you better toss one of your reserves in over here. You don't want this French cavalry getting inside. But their attack, it wasn't timed together, and this is the thing. Like, they are attacking simultaneously now, but it's been much too late at the start. Like, you have to time it so that each attack is together, because if anyone goes in on their own, they're going against a prepared defence, which means you're automatically disadvantaged. There's nothing you can really do about that in a siege. But you're also going against opponents that will have a slight numerical advantage if you go in on your own, in addition to the fact they're going to have more upgrades because they've got more money individually to make up for the fact that there is only 2 of them in comparison to 3. So that's why when people do that in sieges, they're basically setting themselves up for failure, and that does happen quite a lot of times. Which is why, you know, I always stress in videos every time, you know, communicate with your allies and go in together and create situations where you're mutually supporting. Like, for instance, it would have been great for the French player if he'd set his archers up here, shoot the back of my guys here, and the Russian player set his archers up sort of out over here and shoot the back of these players here. That would like give them constant flank shots on our troops, and there's not much we can do about that except shoot at their own archers with their own, and even so it still would be pretty ineffective. There goes my general. killed by the Russians, of all people. But the Russians, as you can see, like, they've tossed in all their infantry, and really this area was easily the least defended area on the battlefield, simply because they're not, Russia's actually not a good siege faction, because Russian infantry's got quite low morale. It is armor piercing, which is good, but the morale problem is pretty bad for them. France and Venice, on the other hand, are excellent. Here you can see the French troops master out, and we're still in good numbers. Like, we're still in pretty good numbers here, especially Granticus, because again we were conserving his Spanish troops to the later stages, because Spain, as I said, is stronger on infantry than anybody else, really. So from that perspective, holding them to the end is definitely the best move to make, because it kind of means you let the opponent exhaust themselves, and then once they have exhausted themselves, they have to attack against a prepared defence against a really strong infantry. They will not be able to win. During roughly around this time, the Venetian player Trenktas, his connection stopped working, so we had to kick him, unfortunately, which I do hate to do that, but the game was kind of more than halfway along, and I thought, I cannot be bothered waiting for this battle to end, or having to restart this battle over again. I want to finish it. So we dropped them, because at this point it was pretty much in our favour. As you can see, we've killed 76% of them, and they've not even killed half of us. So at this stage, we're just finishing off the remainder of these Russians with our guys here. There's not much they can do, and there goes the Russian general taken out. Why has it got the spinny screen problem? And we're going to just get our missile units out here and take care of Venice. So I'm just going to go to triple speed, because as you can see, the Russians are now mass routing, or starting to mass rout. But again, I mean, I think I stress this in every siege video I make, pretty much, especially with attackers. Like, I see this problem so much, and I really have to mention it in all my videos, because I just see it all the time. I see it all the time where attackers just go in on their own. Like, I did a siege the other day, a fortress level siege, and there was 4 attackers and 3 defenders, and he was a newer player, and we were saying to him, okay, just set up like this and we'll all go in together and stuff. He just charged in on his own, and we were repeatedly typing to him, stop, you're going to get wasted if you go in there. Goes in on his own, he kills 2 enemy units, and his whole army mass routs. And our whole team is screwed from that point, because we're basically fighting 3 fully prepared opponents with much less money, because one player was reckless enough to go in on their own, just get totally destroyed. And some players lack the patience, and I'll admit I'm not a super duper patient player, although I know where patience applies, and trust me, Medieval 2 Siege, you have to be patient. You have to be, especially if you're the attacker. Very patient if you're the attacker, because you have to make sure your attack is coordinated correctly with your allies, otherwise your opponents will win, unless you've got even levels of money, in which case even then they've still got the advantage, because they've got a prepared defensive position. But when you combine a prepared defensive position with that of them having extra upgrades to compensate for less numbers, because there's an extra player on the attacker team, it basically means that if you try going on your own, you're going to get destroyed. And I have to stress it every video, because it just keeps being done all the time. People keep making the same silly mistake, and I make exceptions for new players, because, well, they're new, and new players make mistakes. We all did when we were new. I did when I was new. And I make exceptions for that, but I also say this about new players: if you're a new player who's not played much Total War, and you're teamed up with players who've been playing it for several years, and they're telling you some things to do and tips to do, for goodness sake, don't be proud or arrogant about it. Just listen to them, because they know what they're talking about, whereas you have not played it before, and if you just don't listen to them, then you're probably going to get yourself destroyed. And when, as I said, I have no problem with playing with new players. I have no problems with taking time to tutor them. I've done this before. I'm quite happy to do so, but I do require a new player to listen to somebody in the team who is more experienced than him, because otherwise you get very annoying things happening. Because in this team siege or a team field battle, it's all about how you work as a team. Players who play on their own as individuals in team battles are really bad. because they just ruin it for their teammates and they ruin it for their team. You might win one part of the battle, you might win your fight, but what if your allies are struggling against a much better coordinated attack? It doesn't matter if you win it, because your allies have lost, and that means the enemies are going to gang up on you and destroy you anyway. So you have to get into your head in these battles that teamwork is just absolutely critical to success. It doesn't matter if it's a siege, it doesn't matter if it's a field battle, it doesn't matter if it's Rome Total War, Medieval 2, Empire, Napoleon, Shogun 2, Rome 2, whatever. You know, and even other games that are not Total War. Teamwork is very, very crucial. Now, it doesn't mean you can't do some individual actions on your own, but it needs to be for the benefit of the team, because otherwise you just get, you just lose. And some players, some players it's very frustrating with, because they just don't seem to comprehend this fact, or they don't want to accept it or something. And generally speaking, it is a minority, thankfully, players who do that, because I've played lots of sieges, lots of field battles, and I have great allies, and sometimes we lose because we make bad moves or decisions, but the best games are the games where you have great allies and good teamwork all the time. And it's not hard to do that. You just got to communicate, talk to each other, work out a plan, support each other where you can, and learn factions and learn formations and team deployments and things like that. As you can see, I'm sorry for that big rant. I didn't mean to go on a rant, but we just mopped up this. This was an AI, so it didn't kind of count. But we'd already won the battle to this point anyway, and as you can see, the Scots are celebrating, and there you go. It's a clear victory. Both myself and Granticus, not Levinicus, Granticus, we have roughly 1,000 kills apiece, if you consider the captures. And our opponents, as you can see, were pretty easily beaten because the attack wasn't well coordinated. They got better towards the middle of the fight, but that stuff up of coordination at the start was not good. I think Knightly Games went in too soon, and they didn't place their archers well to get flank shots, which would have been very hard for us, or basically we couldn't have done anything to stop it. But never mind, it was still a good game on our part, and I'm sure they learnt from it, and that's the thing. Because you will make these mistakes at first, especially with players who you're not used to. But you should try and work in as a team every time if possible. Anyway, my Noble Swordsman, pretty high kills here, 93, 65, these guys got a wee bit more beaten up. The Feudal Knights, 87, 45, 67, yeah, they broke pretty even except for a couple of them. The Noble Pikes, only one of them did very well, but what they do is they serve to exhaust the opponent, and then your swords units kill them. That's the good thing with Pikes. And my Archers actually did surprisingly well here. I think like 42, 34 and 48, that's not too bad, because they're not great Archers. These Noble Swordsmen did quite good as well, and these Archers not as great, but enough. And this Feudal Knight got 119 kills, although it could have been a bunch of no, it's not captures, they're pure kills, so that's good. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I do apologise if I went into a long-winded rant there, but I always have to do that in the sieges. Like, it always comes to mind, because I see this problem being repeated all the time in sieges, and I just kind of have to do it. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon next time.